What's going on, everybody? Welcome back into Witty Sports Talk for another video, this time about the men's and women's Final Four. March Madness coming to an end this weekend. Friday, Sunday for the women, Saturday, Monday for the men. Big teams, big names, big matchups. And we're going to jump straight into it with my opinions, first on the men's side, then we'll do the women, and then we'll get my predictions near the end. Really struggled picking these games. I mean, I was sitting here for 10 minutes just thinking about all the different variables and who I thought would win, and it just came down to a coin flip really at the end here. But we'll dive straight into it with the men. First game, Alabama versus UConn. So we'll start off with the lower seed in a sense. Alabama, the 4 seed, beat UNC 89-87 and then Clemson 89-82 to get into the Final Four. Very big of an upset against UNC, and then Clemson, a really back and forth game, one of the best games I had seen all tournament and like all year long as far as college basketball comes. Really just back and forth, and then Alabama kind of pulling away near the end there when Clemson had to foul. But just the offense that Alabama has, averaging 90 points per game, the number one offense in the country, full of fast breaks. That's what allowed them to win that game and get into this Final Four here. And they're going to need every bit of that offense against UConn because they have the 104th ranked defense. I mean, that is not ideal for sure, definitely not very good, and something that they need to work on in this coming week, before UConn for sure. They had 13 blocks in the last 2 games combined. That's helped them defensively a little bit. Grant Nelson and Nick Pringle as the big men inside, doing their part defensively. They're going to have to be huge on the boards as well, as Donovan Clingan for UConn is a monster down low and one of the best players in the country. And that matchup down low could be the difference, I think, in this first matchup. On to UConn, the number 1 overall seed in the tournament, blew out San Diego State by 30 and then Illinois by 25. I mean, how do you let a team go on a 30-point run? It was ridiculous. I was watching the first half. It was tied something like 23-23 at halftime or whatever. I changed the channel, go get lunch or whatever it was, or dinner, come back, and it's an absolute blowout. They're up 55-25 or something like that. A 30-point run, never seen it before. UConn just dominant in that second half on all facets. And they've been the best team all year long. Like I mentioned, Donovan Clingan, the difference maker, big center, the size of Zach Edey, but someone that actually seems to be good at basketball and not just extremely tall. Zach Edey's 7'4", Clingan I think is 7'2", and just has that presence down low that is unmatched for UConn, especially in the Big East, and now even more so in the tournament. Number 1 offensive efficiency and number 4 defensive efficiency. Just a well-rounded team that Dan Hurley has put together up in Storrs, Connecticut. Doesn't always have the most flashy recruits, but has experienced players, brings in a couple transfers that add depth to the roster, and just all season long, they've been the best team. Cam Spencer and Stephen Castle at the guard positions handle the ball extremely well, facilitate, get it down low, and just as a team overall, all facets have dominated from start to finish, especially in the NCAA tournament, and I don't really see why it'll change against Alabama. Moving on to the second game, Purdue versus NC State. NC State, what a story they have been. The number 11 seed beat 2 seed Marquette, then 4 seed Duke, both by 9 points to get to the Final Four here. Filled with confidence, have won 9 straight do-or-die games since the start of the ACC tournament. I mean, their head coach was on the block to get fired, and now he got an extension because they're in the Final Four. They keep surprising everybody. America loves them. DJ Burns Jr., big dude in the middle, doesn't look like he can run at all, but he's unstoppable. He's got quick feet, kind of reminds you of Jokic in the NBA, who said he liked his game, was watching the game the other night in a pre-match press conference, so he loves the kid, loves his game, kind of resembles him, and he just dominates down low, averaging 18 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists this tournament. Him and DJ Horn have carried the team to this Final Four, and America has jumped on the bandwagon, and everyone's hoping for an 11 seed to make it to the championship. NC State to win their first title since 1983 and Jimmy Valvano. So we'll see how that plays out. Definitely a good story for sure. Overall team effort with Ben Middlebrooks coming off the bench as well. And it's just one of those teams where The momentum is rolling. The confidence is high. DJ Burns Jr. picking up matchups down low to create mismatches, and then he can facilitate and get rebounds. They have joy when they're playing. You see them just smiling on the court. It's what everyone wants to see when you play a sport when you're a little kid, and they're still doing it in the biggest stage of all in the NCAA tournament. We'll see how well Big Burns can match up against tall Zach Edey, though. Purdue, the number 1 seed, beat Gonzaga, and then Tennessee in the Elite Eight, 72-66 to get to this point. Zach Edey, their star man, 7'4" center, the ultimate mismatch. You're watching the game against Tennessee. The kid's this tall. No one can get a rebound. He's got a million of them, and he just gets fouls called on him all the time, or like the other team is fouling him. And it's just incredible to watch in a sense, but also it might be the most boring 40 points I've ever seen in my entire life. I mean, he had 40 points, 16 rebounds, and I almost fell asleep watching him play because I just don't know how much I like his style. He just sits on the block, puts his hand up, gets it, does a little goes to the left shoulder, and then puts it in. But his footwork, his, basketball sense, I just feel like should be better for someone that's 7'4". If he would just improve some of that game, he would be so good. But we'll see how DJ Burns and him match up. That'll be a very interesting matchup. Completely two different styles of play. And that, I think, could definitely be the difference in this game for sure. Purdue does have more players, though, than just Zach Edey, of course. Fletcher Loyal and Brandon Smith, both consistent in the backcourt, both sophomores. This team had a lot of returning players after losing to the 16 seed last year. They wanted to come back, run it back, just like Virginia did a couple years ago when they lost to the 1 seed, came back, won the NCAA title. Purdue trying to do the same thing this year. The team shoots 40% from 3, draws fouls like crazy. That's definitely going to be an advantage against NC State. And we'll see, which matchups really determine this one. The Edey, DJ Burns Jr. matchup is just the one that everyone wants to see. But those guards could make the difference trying to get the ball down low into their big men. And how well can each of these teams play defense? Can they stop the other one from getting to the free throw line? Could be huge coming down the stretch. Now moving over to the women's side of the bracket before I predict those games, even though you might have got a sense of who I'm going for in those men games, but big names in the women's side. I mean, with Iowa, UConn, South Carolina, and again, NC State make it to the Final Four on the women's side. UConn and NC State, both men's and women's teams, pretty incredible if you really think about it. I think that's happened 11, 12 times now with this year where both men's and women's teams make it to the Final Four. Just got to be going crazy in Storrs, Connecticut and Raleigh, North Carolina. But we'll start off with the Iowa-UConn game. Iowa, of course, Caitlin Clark. That game against LSU, blockbuster. Absolutely incredible game it was between those two teams. Rematch of last year's title game. Iowa did get their revenge this year, though. Caitlin Clark dropping 40 and an exciting 40 points deep from 3, facilitating to her teammates, which Kate Martin and Gabby Marshall played all 40 minutes in that game. Lots of experience now within the group, senior lead-in, and it's just one of those teams where it feels like destiny for them to win, but tough matchup against UConn. Keeping it with Iowa, though, for now, Hannah Stalkey and Sydney Offalater are going to need to work together. Again, just like they did against LSU, trying to get as many rebounds as they can, but it's tough for them. They're not the tallest. UConn has bigs down low. So does South Carolina. So does NC State. So all of the matchups on the block are not in Iowa's favor. It's just Caitlin Clark, along with Martin and Marshall, from outside the perimeter that gives Iowa a good edge in any of these matchups if it gets high scoring. Now over to UConn, playing great basketball right now. One of the best teams, I think, as far as the flow of how they're playing. Gino Auriemma has them cooking at the right moment, getting it back to the Final Four another year, 15 out of the last 16 years. Trying to pick up their first championship in a little bit, though. Paige Becker is obviously one of the best players in the nation. Her versus Caitlin Clark is going to be an epic matchup. And we thought Iowa-LSU was good, but there wasn't really any 1v1 matchups going on there. Obviously, Haley Van Lith was trying to guard Caitlin Clark, but that's a bit of a mismatch. But Beckers versus Clark is going to be blockbuster. Two of the best players in women's college basketball right now, if not the best two. And that one-on-one guard matchup is something I'm looking forward to maybe more than any of the men's one-on-one matchups. Elijah Edwards may be the difference in this game, though. 6'3", again, should dominate on the glass inside. Stolke and Offlauder for Iowa are going to have their hands full with Edwards. She does a tremendous amount of work for UConn on the boards. Her and Paige both had 20 points last game. Nobody else on the team had above 8. That's my only concern for UConn. If either Edwards or Paige Beckers are not on it, they're hitting bricks. One goes down with a sprained ankle, unfortunately, something like that. How we saw Angel Reese have a sprained ankle for a little bit there. If one of them is not on it, that could spell trouble for UConn. And if Caitlin Clark gets hot and Beckers is maybe cold, that could be wraps. So, real tough matchup for both teams in a sense where there's not a lot of depth on UConn, but Iowa, really small down low. We'll see which matchup and which problem for this team becomes bigger in this game. Over to the next semifinal, South Carolina versus NC State. NC State, the huge underdog here, beating the 1 seed Texas by 10, 76-66 in their Elite Eight matchup. Isaiah James poured in 27, hitting 7 threes. And as a team, the Wolfpack were 50% from 3. They're going to need to do that again to beat South Carolina. 4 or 5 starters hit double digits. Big offensive day against Texas. Once again, going to need a huge offensive day to beat South Carolina. River Baldwin, the center, going to need to be really prolific. Not just scoring, but rebounding the ball as well. Cardoso for South Carolina, one of the best players in the country, big body down low, maybe the best center in the game, going to be a top 5 pick in the WNBA draft. Her presence is unmatched. South Carolina feeds her, and when she gets the ball, South Carolina goes on big runs. If Baldwin can slow down Cardoso, then South Carolina slows down. For South Carolina, we've seen them give up some leads against Indiana, and Oregon State kept it close for a little bit, and that's when Cardoso didn't get the ball. If they feed it down low, let Cardoso cook, South Carolina really doesn't have anything to worry about, I don't think, as the guard plays a bit even. But South Carolina is just so good as a team, total team effort. I mean, the bench players, some of them got 20 minutes, and then last game against Oregon State, the bench players scored more than the starters, 38 compared to 32. Cardoso, their main stead down low on the block, defensively, block shots, and on the offensive end, she does it all. Raven Johnson, another one for South Carolina, facilitating a couple of assists last game, and then Bree Hall helping score from the guard position. It's just a really good team for South Carolina, which hasn't lost all season. As we know, they're undefeated, looking to get back to the championship after not making it to the championship last year, also being undefeated, losing to Iowa. And so it's just one of those teams even better than last year, I think, and we'll see if they can get it done. Over to the prediction side of things now. Back to the men's side. UConn versus Bama. I think I'm going to go with the 1 seed UConn. I don't know if both 1 seeds will win, but I'm more confident in UConn beating Bama than I am Purdue beating NC State. Even with NC State being 11 seed. Bama, I feel like their defense has got to let them down at some point, and UConn is just so well-rounded that it's hard for me to imagine, even if Bama puts up 89 points, in which they're 17-1 on the season, if they reach the 89-point mark, winning the game. Even if they put 89, I think UConn will get 90. I just think UConn's too good of a team to lose before the championship. And for the other match, I'm going to go NC State. I'm going to keep on the bandwagon, get on the hype train with DJ Burns Jr., and I just think one of the 1 seeds will lose, and I think that the overall team performance from NC State will just edge out Zach Edey and another one of his good performances. But I think Purdue just gets edged out. NC State makes it to the final, and they play UConn, where they're, unfortunately, the hype train comes to an end. UConn, too good of a team. Klingon down low is just too good. And I think that's where DJ Burns Jr. against a really good big that's also his size and that actually can do some post moves and move with him because they both have quick feet. I think that mismatch is just too much for NC State to overcome. And I've got UConn winning it all on the men's side, going back-to-back, and Dan Hurley once again just putting together a Final Four run and an NCAA tournament run that has UConn lifting another banner in Storrs, Connecticut. Now over to the women's side of things for the Final Four picks. South Carolina, Iowa, the 1 seeds. NC State, UConn, the 3 seeds. Both really good games, I think. But I'm going to take both 1 seeds. I really thought about this. I actually would not be surprised at all if UConn beat Iowa. I'm more confident in the UConn beating Iowa pick than NC State beating South Carolina. And so I would not be surprised if one of these 1 seeds lost. And UConn just has such a well-rounded team that I think they could pull off the upset against Iowa. But I'm going to go South Carolina and Iowa, a rematch of one of the games in the NCAA tournament last year where Iowa upset South Carolina. And it's once again Caitlin Clark, her final game against an undefeated South Carolina team. And I'm going to take South Carolina. They're going to finish the job this year. Caitlin Clark loses 2 championships in a row to end her college career. Really sad for her. She'll probably pour 40. But I just think Cordosa down low for South Carolina is too much to handle. I don't know if Iowa can rebound against these bigs 3 games in a row. At one point, Caitlin Clark has got to go cold in a sense where she doesn't put up 40. She's got to miss a couple threes, and the surrounding cast might let her down at one of these stages. And I think in the final, in the championship game, South Carolina take it home. So both number 1 overall seeds, men's and women's, UConn, South Carolina take it home. My predictions, a little bit boring in the end with both number 1 seeds, but I think it'll be a whole bunch of really good basketball to watch this weekend, and we'll see if I'm right come the end of it. I'll do a bracket review after the tournament, and we'll see how I did overall. But for now, thanks for watching, and watch the basketball.